The Arizona desert stretched endlessly beneath the merciless sun of late summer. 1887. Red earth cracked like broken promises, and jagged rock formations jutted from the landscape like the bones of ancient giants. Above, vultures traced lazy circles against a sky bleached nearly white by heat, their shadows fleeting dark omens across the barren ground. Taza pressed his palm against the wound in his side, feeling warm blood seep between his fingers. The bullet had found him 3 days ago during an ambush at Skeleton Canyon. His Apache band had scattered like quail before the cavalry's rifles, and he'd been running ever since. The fever had started yesterday, turning his vision hazy and his thoughts to water. He stumbled through a narrow ravine. Thorns from barrel cacti tearing at his already shredded cavalry jacket, stolen from a dead soldier months ago. Each step sent lightning through his body, but stopping meant death. Behind him, somewhere in the maze of canyons, the Army's Apache scouts tracked his blood trail. They knew these lands as well as he did, perhaps better, for they had sold their souls to the white man's promises. The dying mining town appeared through the heat shimmer like a mirage. Taza had avoided such places for years, knowing the hatred that festered there ran deeper than the abandoned silver mines. But his choices had narrowed to this: risk the town or die in the desert. His lips, cracked and bleeding, formed a bitter smile. Perhaps there was no difference. Millbrook had seen better days. The silver boom of '79 had built it, and the bust of '84 had nearly killed it. Now only stubborn souls and broken dreams remained, clinging to the weathered buildings that leaned against each other like drunks after last call. The main street was more dust than road, punctuated by the occasional tumbleweed and the hollow eyes of abandoned storefronts. Clara Whitmore watched the horizon from her porch. As she did every evening since Thomas died, the sun painted the desert in shades of blood and gold, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. She pulled her shawl tighter, though the heat still pressed against her like a living thing. 2 years now since the mine robbery. 2 years of whispers and sideways glances from the good people of Millbrook. Widow's curse, they called it behind their hands. Bad luck to be near her. Worse luck to help her, as if grief were contagious, as if loss could leap from person to person like typhoid. She'd stopped attending church after Mrs. Henderson had pointedly moved to a different pew, stopped shopping at Murphy's store after he'd served her last, making her wait while he attended to everyone else first. The house Thomas had built for her was solid enough, though loneliness had crept into every corner like dust. It sat at the very edge of town, where civilization gave way to wilderness. Close enough to town for safety, far enough for privacy, Thomas had said with that crooked smile of his. Now it felt like neither. Too far for help if she needed it, too close to escape the town's judgment. Clara rose to fetch water from the well before full dark. The wooden bucket descended into blackness, the rope rough against her palms. These simple tasks had become rituals, marking the passage of empty days. She hauled the water up, muscles straining with the effort. Thomas would have, but no, she'd learned to stop that line of thinking. Thomas would have done many things, but Thomas was gone. A movement near the old storage shed caught her eye. Coyote, probably. Or perhaps a desert fox looking for chickens she no longer kept. But as she peered through the gathering dusk, the shape resolved into something else entirely. A man, collapsed against the weathered boards, his body twisted at an unnatural angle. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. Raiders sometimes passed through, and a woman alone. She gripped the bucket handle tighter, ready to use it as a weapon if needed. But the figure didn't move, didn't even stir when she took a cautious step closer. Blood, even in the dying light. She could see the dark stain spreading beneath him. The man wore a military jacket, but beneath the dust and blood, she glimpsed copper skin and hair black as midnight. Apache. The word formed in her mind with all the weight of every newspaper headline, every whispered story of massacre and revenge. She should go inside, bar the door, let the desert claim him as it claimed everything else eventually. It's what anyone in town would do, what they'd expect her to do. But as she stood frozen, The man's eyes fluttered open. Dark eyes, fever-bright and unfocused, met hers for just a moment before closing again. "Water," he whispered in English, the word barely more than a breath. Clara looked back at her house, then at the road to town. No one would come this way tonight. No one would know. She could pretend she'd never seen him, and by morning the vultures would have done their work. It would be the safe choice, the smart choice. But she thought of Thomas, bleeding out in her arms while the posse chased shadows through the canyons. How she'd begged for help that never came. How quickly the town had washed its hands of them both. "Damn fool," she muttered, not sure if she meant the Apache or herself. She set down the bucket and knelt beside him, her late father's medical training surfacing through years of disuse. The wound was bad, a rifle shot, festering in the heat. Without treatment, he'd be dead by dawn. The storage shed was sturdy enough, far enough from the house to maintain some pretense of ignorance if anyone came looking. But moving him would be another matter. Clara studied his face, younger than she'd first thought beneath the dirt and pain. Warrior's scars marked his arms, but his features held something else, a weariness that went deeper than physical wounds. "Can you stand?" she asked, though she doubted he could even hear her. To her surprise, his eyes opened again. This time they focused on her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. Suspicion warred with desperation in that dark gaze. "No, white man's. Mercy," he managed, each word a struggle. "Good thing I'm not a man, then," Clara said, surprising herself with the tartness in her voice. "Now, you can let me help you, or you can die here in my yard and bring the whole cavalry down on my head. Your choice." Something that might have been amusement flickered across his features. He nodded once, a bare movement that seemed to cost him dearly. Clara slipped her arm under his shoulders, steeling herself for the effort. He was heavier than Thomas had been, all lean muscle and desperate strength. Together they staggered the 20 feet to the shed, his breath hot against her neck, the smell of blood and sage and something wild filling her senses. The inside of the shed was dim and dusty, filled with the detritus of her former life. Thomas's mining equipment, sacks of feed for animals she no longer owned, medical supplies her father had left her. She'd kept it all out of habit more than hope. But now she silently thanked that stubborn streak as she lowered the Apache onto a bed of empty grain sacks. He groaned through clenched teeth, fresh blood seeping through his fingers. Clara lit a lamp with shaking hands, the yellow light revealing the full extent of his injuries. Beyond the bullet wound, his body bore the evidence of a running battle. Cuts, bruises, what looked like a cavalry saber slash across his left arm. "I need to clean these wounds," she said, more to herself than to him. "It's going to hurt." His eyes found hers again. "Pain, old friend," he said, and she heard the echo of her own grief in those words. Clara worked through the night, drawing on everything her father had taught her about battlefield medicine. The bullet had passed through, a small mercy, but infection had already taken hold. She cleaned and dressed the wounds, forced water past his cracked lips, and fought the fever with cool cloths and willow bark tea. Somewhere in the darkest hours, he began to speak, rambling words in Apache that she couldn't understand, mixed with fragments of English, names of the dead. She thought, places burned and lost. His hands moved restlessly, fighting invisible enemies, or perhaps reaching for loved ones long gone. "Shh," she soothed, the same meaningless sounds she'd made over Thomas as he died. "Rest now." Dawn crept across the desert like a thief, stealing the coolness of night. Clara dozed in the rickety chair she'd dragged from the house, jerking awake each time the wounded man stirred. He was quiet now, the fever broken but not beaten. In the morning light, she could see him more clearly, sharp cheekbones, a proud nose, lips cracked from sun and thirst. Handsome, she thought, then flushed at the impropriety of it. A sound from outside made her freeze. Horses on the road. She peered through a crack in the shed wall and saw 3 riders heading toward town, too far away to identify, but moving with the purposeful gait of men on a mission. Her heart hammered as they passed. not slowing, not looking toward her property. Not yet. When she turned back, the Apache's eyes were open, watching her with a clarity that hadn't been there before. "You saved me," he said, not quite a question. "Haven't saved you yet," Clara replied. "That fever could still kill you, or infection, or those men looking for you." Why? The single word carried the weight of all the history between their peoples, all the blood and hatred and broken promises. Clara was quiet for a long moment, considering. Why indeed? "Because someone should have," she finally said. "When it mattered. When I needed. Someone should have." He studied her face as if reading a map to hidden treasure. "I am Taza," he said at last, "of the Chiricahua." "Clara Whitmore," she replied, the formality of introduction absurd under the circumstances. "Of nowhere in particular. Not anymore." Outside, the desert awakened to another day of merciless heat. Vultures still circled, patient as death itself. And in a dusty shed at the edge of a dying town, two wounded souls began the dangerous dance of trust, while the world they knew prepared to tear them apart. The fever returned with vengeance on the second night. Clara found herself in a battle she'd fought before, though last time she'd lost. She worked by lamplight, changing blood-soaked bandages and forcing medicine past Taza's clenched teeth. His skin burned beneath her touch, and she could see the poison spreading from the wound in angry red streaks. "Hold on," she whispered, pressing a cool cloth to his forehead. "You're too stubborn to die in my shed." Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Infection's like fire, Clara. You have to draw it out before it consumes everything." She'd been 12 when he'd first shown her how to lance a wound, her hands steady even then. He'd said she had the makings of a fine doctor. If only the world were different. The world hadn't changed, but her hands remembered. She heated her father's surgical knife over the lamp flame, gathered clean cloths, and steeled herself for what needed doing. Taza's eyes fluttered open as she positioned the blade. "This will hurt," she warned. "Do it," he gritted out, understanding without explanation. When the knife bit deep, he made no sound, though his whole body went rigid. The corruption poured out, foul-smelling and dark. Clara worked quickly, efficiently, cleaning and packing the wound with herbs her father had sworn by. Only when she finished did she realize Taza had passed out, his face gray beneath the copper of his skin. She kept vigil through the long hours until dawn, monitoring his breathing, checking the bandages, fighting the doubt that whispered she was only prolonging the inevitable. When the sun finally crept through the cracks in the shed walls, his fever had broken for real this time. He slept like the dead, but it was healing sleep, not the restless thrashing of delirium. Clara allowed herself a moment of triumph before exhaustion claimed her. She dozed in the chair, her father's medical bag clutched in her lap like a talisman. She woke to find Taza watching her, his dark eyes alert despite the shadows of pain that lingered there. "You have medicine knowledge," he said, not quite questioning. "My father was a doctor. Army surgeon during the war between the states, frontier physician after—" She straightened, working kinks from her neck. "He said healing was healing. Didn't matter who needed it. Wise man, dead. 3 winters past, typhoid." She busied herself checking his bandages, not wanting to see pity in his eyes. The town had a new doctor by then. Wouldn't treat the Mexican families. Father wore himself out trying to help everyone. Got sick himself. Taza was quiet for a moment. "My grandfather was medicine man. Taught me plants. Ceremonies. White man's bullet's stronger than Apache medicine. Sometimes they're stronger than white man's medicine too," Clara said, thinking of Thomas dying despite everything she'd tried. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of their respective losses. Finally, Clara asked, "Why do they hunt you, specifically? I mean, the Army's always hunting Apache, but they seem particularly keen on finding you." His jaw tightened. "I would not go to San Carlos, would not live penned like cattle, begging for rotten meat from the agency. Some call me renegade." He paused, seeming to weigh his words. There was fight. Soldiers died. Clara knew she should feel fear or disgust. This man had killed her people. Soldiers just doing their duty. But all she could think of was the cavalry captain who'd told her Thomas probably got what he deserved, running a small operation without proper protection. The same captain who'd called off the search after just 2 days. "Are you going to kill me?" she asked, surprised by her own bluntness. Taza looked genuinely startled. "Why would I kill you? I'm white, your enemy. You saved my life, fed me your medicine, gave me your water." He struggled to sit up, wincing. Apache do not forget debts. Also, he studied her face with that unnerving intensity. You have ghost eyes, eyes that have seen too much death. Warriors recognize warriors. Clara laughed, short and bitter. I'm no warrior. I couldn't even save my own husband. Fighting death is war. Taza said simply, sometimes we lose. Does not make us less warrior. The unexpected philosophy from a man everyone would call savage made her throat tight. She turned away, busying herself with preparing more willow bark tea. You need to eat something. Keep your strength up. You should not waste food on me. I will leave soon. You'll leave when you can walk more than 3 steps without falling on your face, Clara said tartly. Until then, you're my patient, and you'll do as I say. Something that might have been amusement flickered in his eyes. Yes, medicine woman. Over the next days, they developed a routine born of necessity. Clara would tend his wounds in the early morning and late evening, when the chance of being seen was smallest. During the day, she went about her usual business, though she found herself starting at every hoofbeat on the road, every unexpected sound. The nights were the hardest, in the darkness of the shed, with only the lamp for company. The barriers between them seemed to dissolve. Taza spoke of his childhood before the wars intensified, racing horses across the mesas, learning to read the signs in earth and sky, the sweetness of agave roasted in fire pits. Clara found herself sharing memories she'd locked away, picking wild strawberries with her mother, her father teaching her to read using medical texts, the first time she'd seen Thomas and thought him the handsomest man in 3 territories. Why did you marry him? Taza asked one night, after she'd mentioned Thomas's laugh. He was kind, Clara said simply, and he looked at me like I was something more than a frontier spinster with odd notions. My father had taught me too much. You see, I could read and write better than most men, knew Latin names for bones and organs. It put off most suitors. Apache women are strong, know healing, make decisions. Weakness in women is white man's sickness. Clara smiled despite herself. Thomas used to say something similar, said he wanted a partner, not a decoration. He was wise to see your worth. The compliment, simple and direct, made her chest tight. She changed the subject. Tell me about this pure bride you seek. Is that why you wouldn't go to the reservation? Looking for a wife? Taza's expression darkened. On reservation, Apache ways die, children taken to white schools, forget language. Women forget old ceremonies. I thought, if I find good woman, pure woman, start new, make family strong in old ways, clean blood, no sickness of spirit. Pure, Clara repeated, something sharp in her tone. And what makes a woman pure in your eyes? He seemed to sense the dangerous ground. Woman who knows her worth. Keeps traditions, not touched by... He stopped, frowning. Words are wrong. In Apache means whole, complete, like unbroken pot, still holds water. And a widow? A woman who's buried her heart with her husband. Is she a broken pot? Their eyes met across the lamplight. Depends, Taza said slowly. If she wants to hold water again. The question hung between them like a living thing. Clara looked away first, busying herself with rewrapping bandages that didn't need changing. Her hands shook slightly, and she cursed herself for a fool. This was a patient, nothing more. A dangerous patient who would leave as soon as he was able, who belonged to a world that would see her dead as soon as look at her. But when their fingers brushed as she handed him the tea, the jolt that went through her had nothing to do with fear. The desert wind rose that night, howling around the edges of the shed like wolves. Clara had returned to the house, but sleep eluded her. She found herself at the window, watching the shed as if she could see through its walls. Sometime near midnight, unable to bear it anymore, she wrapped herself in a shawl and crossed the yard. Taza was awake, sitting up despite her orders to rest. In the lamplight, the shadows played across his face, highlighting the sharp planes and angles. He looked like something carved from the red rocks themselves, ancient and enduring. "Storm coming," he said as she entered. "Can smell it on wind. We need rain." Clara settled into her chair, pulling the shawl tighter. "Though the roof leaks something terrible." "I could fix it, when stronger." The casual offer of domestic help startled her. "You know how to repair roofs?" "Know many things. Hunt, fight, build, repair. Apache men must be ready for all." He paused. "Also know you should not be here at night. Not safe for reputation." Clara laughed, genuinely amused. "What reputation?" "I'm the widow Whitmore. Cursed and avoided. Being seen with an Apache would just confirm what they already think." "What do they think?" "That I'm touched, broken. That I brought death to my husband and would bring it to anyone else who gets close." The words came out more bitter than she'd intended. Taza was quiet for a long moment. "My people have word." He spoke something in Apache, liquid syllables she couldn't hope to reproduce. "Means person marked by spirits. Sometimes for bad, sometimes for good, but always for purpose." "And what purpose could there be in Thomas's death? In your people's suffering? In any of this? Cannot see pattern when standing inside it. Like tracking, must climb high. Look down to see where trail leads." The philosophy should have irritated her, but instead she found it oddly comforting. They sat in companionable silence, listening to the wind build, when the first fat raindrops began to fall. Taza tilted his head back, inhaling deeply. "First rain in 2 moons," he said. Earth was dying for it. The drops became a deluge, drumming on the tin roof like gunfire. True to her word, leaks appeared, water dripping steadily in several spots. Clara positioned buckets and pans, the pinging of water on metal creating an odd rhythm. "Dance of rain," Taza said, something almost like a smile playing at his lips. "My sister would say spirits are celebrating." "Would say?" The almost smile vanished. "She went to Carlisle School, 4 winters past. Have not heard if she lives." Clara knew about Carlisle, the school where Apache children were sent to have their culture beaten out of them. "I'm sorry. Sorry changes nothing. Only action changes." He looked at her directly. "You take much risk, helping me. Why do you stay in this place that hates you?" It was a fair question, one she'd asked herself countless times. "It's all I have left. The house Thomas built, the land he worked for. Leaving would feel like letting him go completely." "Dead do not hold us. We hold them." Taza touched his chest. "Here, carry them forward or stay buried with them. Choice is ours." The rain intensified, and with it came the cold. Clara shivered, and before she could protest, Taza had shrugged off the thin blanket she'd given him and held it out to her. "You need it more," she protested. "You're still healing. Apache are made for cold. You're not." She took the blanket but moved her chair closer to share it. It was improper, scandalous even, but propriety seemed a flimsy concern with the rain hammering the roof and the night pressing close around them. "Tell me about your sister," she said softly. So he did, speaking of a girl who could gentle wild horses with whispered words, who knew every edible plant in a day's ride, who laughed like water over stones. And Clara found herself speaking of her own losses. Her mother, dead, birthing a son who lived only hours. Her father's slow decline. Thomas's dreams of striking silver and building a proper house in San Francisco. They talked until the storm passed and dawn crept gray and watery through the clouds. Only then did Clara realize she'd dozed off, her head on Taza's shoulder. his warmth seeping through the shared blanket. She jerked upright, face flaming. "I should—" "Yes," he agreed, though something in his eyes suggested he was as reluctant as she. She fled back to the house, but the memory of that unguarded moment followed her, the steady beat of his heart, the smell of sage and rain, the feeling of being, for just a moment, not alone. The whispers started at Murphy's general store. Clara had ventured into town for supplies, keeping her purchases modest as always. Flour, salt, a small portion of bacon, but Mrs. Dalton noticed the extra pound of cornmeal, the additional tin of peaches. Stocking up for winter already. Mrs. Whitmore? The banker's wife's tone dripped false sweetness. Or perhaps you're expecting company. Just being prudent. Mrs. Dalton. Clara kept her voice steady, counting out coins with deliberate care. The almanac predicts early snows. Mr. Murphy watched from behind his counter, eyes narrowed. He'd been Thomas's friend once, had even spoken at the funeral. Now he tallied her purchases like evidence in a trial. "Been seeing coyote tracks near your place. Widow Whitmore. Might want to be careful. Strange things been happening out on the frontier. Strange things have always happened on the frontier. Mr. Murphy?" Clara gathered her purchases, aware of every eye in the store following her movements. "Good day." The walk home felt longer than usual, the bundle heavier. Every shadow could hide watching eyes. Every distant rider could be someone who'd noticed too much. By the time she reached her property, sweat dampened her collar despite the cooling weather. Taza was standing when she entered the shed, testing his weight on his injured side. He'd fashioned a walking stick from a piece of oak, moving slowly but steadily around the small space. "You should not go to town," he said without preamble. "Can smell suspicion on you like smoke. I needed supplies. You're eating more now that you're healing." She set down the bundle, trying to keep the worry from her voice. "And we need medicine for that wound. It's healing, but slowly. Leave me jerky and water. I know places. You know places where you'll die of infection or get caught by the army." Clara cut him off, surprised by her own vehemence. "You're not strong enough yet. And you are not strong enough for what they will do if they find me here." The truth of it hung between them like a blade. Clara knew the penalty for harboring an enemy of the state. She'd heard stories of sympathizer trials, of good Christian women tarred and feathered for far less than what she was doing. "Then we'll have to make sure they don't find you," she said finally. That night, she moved him to the root cellar beneath the house. It was deeper hidden, accessible through a trap door in the kitchen that Thomas had disguised beneath a worn rug. The space was cramped but dry, lined with shelves of preserves and hanging herbs. She brought down blankets, a lamp, what medical supplies she could spare. "Like tomb," Taza observed, testing the earthen walls. "Like sanctuary," Clara corrected. "No one knows about this but me. Thomas was particular about his secrets." She saw the question in his eyes. What other secrets had her husband kept? But he didn't voice it. Instead, he settled onto the makeshift pallet, favoring his injured side. "You take much risk for enemy." "Are you my enemy?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Taza looked up at her, lamplight catching the angles of his face. "I do not know anymore." The honesty of it struck her like a physical blow. She found herself sitting on the cellar steps, abandoning any pretense of nurse-like distance. "I used to think the world was simple. Good people, bad people, clear lines between them. Then Thomas died, and the good people showed their true faces. Now?" She gestured helplessly. "Now I'm hiding an Apache warrior in my root cellar, and it feels more right than anything has in 2 years. World is not simple," Taza agreed. "But people make it complicated. Earth knows only truth. Rain falls on Apache and white man same. Sun rises for all. Death comes for all." He paused, studying her. "You understand this? Is why you could save me." "I haven't saved you yet," Clara said, but the words lacked conviction. Something had shifted between them in the days of shared darkness and careful tending. The man before her was no longer just a patient or even a dangerous secret. He was Taza, who spoke of his sister with breaking voice, who knew the names of stars she'd never learned, whose rare smiles transformed his warrior's face into something that made her heart race. A sound from above made them both freeze, footsteps on the porch, heavy and deliberate. Clara's blood turned to ice water. She gestured for Taza to be silent, then climbed the steps on trembling legs, carefully replacing the rug over the trap door. The knock, when it came, was authoritative. Sheriff's knock, she thought, her hand hesitating on the door latch. Mrs. Whitmore? Not the sheriff. Mayor Hutchinson, which might be worse. A word, if you please. She opened the door part way, not inviting him in. Jacob Hutchinson stood on her porch like he owned it, flanked by 2 members of the town council. He was a big man running to fat, with cold eyes and soft hands that had never known honest work. Mayor Hutchinson, rather late for a social call. These are unsociable times, Mrs. Whitmore. His gaze traveled past her, trying to see into the house. There's been talk. There's always talk in Millbrook. Indeed. But this talk concerns Apache raiders in the area. A wounded one. Specifically, armies offering good money for information. He stepped closer, and she could smell whiskey and cigars. A widow living alone might see things, might be vulnerable to certain dangers. The threat was barely veiled. Clara felt rage rise in her throat like bile. The only danger I've faced lately stands on my porch. Mayor, his face darkened. Mind your tongue. Woman, you exist in this town on sufferance. Your husband's debts were paid in full with the sale of his mining equipment. Clara lifted her chin. I have the receipts, if you'd care to see them. Again, paper doesn't pay for protection. Mrs. Whitmore doesn't ensure goodwill. He leaned in closer. I've had my eye on you for some time. A woman alone needs guidance, protection. I could ensure your safety for the right considerations. The implication was clear as the disgust on her face. Get off my property. You forget yourself. And you forget that I still own Thomas's shotgun and know how to use it. Clara's voice was steady as bedrock. Good evening, gentlemen. She closed the door in their faces, throwing the bolt with shaking hands. Through the window, she watched them confer, Hutchinson gesturing angrily. But eventually they left, horses' hooves fading into the darkness. Only then did she allow herself to sink into a chair, trembling with delayed reaction. The trapdoor lifted slightly and Taza's face appeared. Should have let me kill him, he said quietly. That would certainly solve all our problems, Clara said, hysteria edging her voice. Dead mare on my doorstep. They'd probably throw a parade in my honor. Taza climbed out of the cellar, moving with predatory grace despite his healing wounds. Men like that, they take what they want, have seen it in soldiers, in agents, in all who hold power over others. He will not stop. I know. Clara pressed her palms against her eyes. But I can't just leave. This is all I have. Is it? Taza stood before her, and she had to look up to meet his eyes. House, land, or chains you made from grief? The words stung because they held truth. She stood abruptly, needing distance, but the kitchen was too small. She could feel his warmth, smell the mixture of herbs and earth that clung to him. You don't understand, she said. You can leave, disappear into your mountains. I have nowhere. You have everywhere. His voice was intense now, urgent. World is wide. Could go to California, Oregon Territory, start new. Alone, a widow with no family, no connections. Not alone. The words hung between them like a thunderclap. Clara's breath caught. What are you saying? Taza stepped closer, and she could see the war in his face, desire battling honor, hope fighting tradition. Am saying I have been fool, looking for pure woman while... He gestured in frustration. Apache words better. You are like storm that cleans sky, like fire that clears dead wood for new growth. Not pure, better, true. Taza, should not speak this. You saved me. Owe you debt. But debt is not why... He stopped, jaw clenched. I will leave tomorrow, before bring more danger. You're not healed enough. Healed enough to know staying brings death to you. He turned away. That mare, he watches you like wolf watches wounded deer. My presence makes you weaker in his eyes. Clara felt something break inside her. Some dam she'd built from proper behavior and resignation. Then I'm already dead. I've been dead for 2 years, going through motions, pretending to live. You want to know what's worse than danger? Nothing. Feeling nothing, wanting nothing, being nothing but the widow Whitmore, until they put me in the ground next to Thomas. She was crying now, tears she'd held back for months pouring out. And then you show up bleeding on my land. And suddenly I remember what it's like to feel afraid and angry and alive. So don't you dare leave to protect me from danger when safety is just another word for the grave. Taza turned back to her, something raw in his face. In 2 strides he was there, hands framing her face, thumbs brushing away tears. Clara, he said, just her name, but it sounded like prayer. She kissed him, or he kissed her, or they crashed together like storm fronts, inevitable and electric. His mouth was warm, tasting of herbs and promise. Her hands tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, and she felt him groan against her lips. When they broke apart, breathing hard, the world had shifted on its axis. This is madness, Clara whispered. Yes, Taza agreed, resting his forehead against hers. Best kind. A coyote howled in the distance, and reality crashed back. Clara stepped away, wrapping her arms around herself. They'll kill us both. Maybe, but we live first. He touched her face gently. I know Apache woman who married Mexican trader. Live in mountains near Agua Prieta. Could go there, start new, together. The word hung between them, impossible and tempting as water in the desert. Clara thought of everything she'd be leaving. Thomas's grave, her father's medical books, the house that held her memories. Then she thought of Hutchinson's eyes, the town's whispers, the empty years stretching ahead. I need time to think, she said finally. Taza nodded. Time runs short. Army patrols increase. Snow comes soon to high passes. He moved toward the cellar. But Clara, he looked back. Whatever you choose, you gave me more than life, gave me reason to want it. She couldn't speak past the tightness in her throat. After he'd descended into the cellar, she stood in her kitchen, touching her lips, tasting possibility and peril in equal measure. Through the window, stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to human struggles, constant as the choice that lay before her. Stay and die slowly, or flee and risk everything for a chance at living. Put that way, it hardly seemed like a choice at all. But first, she had to survive what was coming, because Mayor Hutchinson wouldn't forget her rejection, and the town's suspicions were growing like storm clouds on the horizon. Clara checked Thomas's shotgun, loaded and ready. Whatever came next, she wouldn't face it unarmed, not anymore. The next days passed in a strange suspension, like the breathless quiet before lightning strikes. Clara went about her routines with exaggerated normalcy, tending her small garden, mending clothes that didn't need mending, all while her mind raced with possibilities and fears. In the cellar, Taza grew stronger but also more restless. She could see it in the way he paced the small space, in the tension that coiled through his body like a spring wound too tight. They spoke carefully now, the memory of that kiss lying between them like a live coal, too hot to touch directly. Tell me about this place near Agua Prieta, Clara said one evening, dabbing fresh salve on his healing wound. The edges had finally begun to knit properly, pink new skin replacing angry red. Small valley, hidden, good water, game, mountains protect from wind. His voice was carefully neutral, but she could feel him watching her. Apache woman there, Maria Flores. Married trader named Joaquin. They take in those who need shelter, ask no questions. And they'd accept us, a white woman and Apache man who brings shame to both peoples. Taza's mouth twisted. Maria understands love that breaks rules. Her own family cast her out for choosing Mexican, but she says heart knows no borders. Clara's hand stilled on the bandage. Is that what this is? Love. The word hung in the air like smoke. Taza caught her hand, his calloused fingers gentle around hers. Apache have different word, means, when two spirits recognize each other, even across great distance, like eagle knows its mate in sky, even among many birds. We've known each other barely 2 weeks, Clara said, but the protest sounded weak even to her. I knew you when you gave water to enemy. You knew me when I spoke of my sister. He brought her hand to his chest, where she could feel his heartbeat strong and steady. Time is white man's chain. Heart knows what it knows. A sound from outside made them both freeze. Horses, several of them, and voices carrying on the night air. Clara quickly finished the bandage and climbed the steps, peering through the kitchen curtains. Mayor Hutchinson was back, this time with 4 men including Sheriff Watson. Her stomach dropped. This wasn't a social call. Stay hidden, she whispered down to Taza. No matter what you hear. She opened the door before they could knock, shotgun prominent in her hands. Evening, gentlemen. Rather late for visiting. Sheriff Watson, a thin man with tired eyes, looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Whitmore, we need to search your property. On what grounds? Reports of suspicious activity, Hutchinson said, pushing forward. Smoke from your shed at odd hours. Extra food purchases. Mrs. Dalton is quite observant. Since when is it a crime to use my own shed or buy food? Since Apache raiders started killing settlers. Hutchinson snapped. 3 families hit in the last week. Army thinks wounded one might be hiding nearby. Clara kept her face carefully neutral, though her heart hammered. And you think I'm harboring fugitives? Have you forgotten what they did to my husband? Grief makes people do strange things, Hutchinson said, his eyes glittering. Stand aside. She had no choice. Clara stepped back, keeping the shotgun visible but not directly threatening. The men spread out, some heading for the shed, others beginning to search the house. She followed Sheriff Watson, who at least seemed apologetic. Just doing our job, ma'am, he said, opening cupboards with obvious reluctance. Mayor's insistent. The mayor's been insistent about many things lately, Clara said quietly. Watson's ears reddened, and she knew he'd heard about Hutchinson's visit. The sheriff was a decent man, or tried to be, but he was also weak. Hutchinson owned half the town and had ambitions for the rest. Clara, Hutchinson's voice from outside, triumphant. Care to explain this? Her blood froze. She hurried out to find him standing by the shed, holding up a cavalry jacket, Taza's, blood-stained and torn. She'd meant to burn it but kept forgetting. And now, interesting thing to keep in a shed, Hutchinson said, smiling like a cat with a bird. Unless you'd like to explain how you came by it. Think, Clara, think. I found it, she said. Out by Skeleton Ridge, 2 weeks back, thought there might be a reward for returning army property. Found it. How convenient. Hutchinson turned to the others. Search harder. Our widow has secrets. They tore through her property like locusts, overturning barrel and crates, rifling through Thomas's tools, even digging in her garden. Clara watched, fury building with each violation, until one of the men approached the house again. Already searched inside, Watson said, but his voice lacked conviction. Not thoroughly enough, Hutchinson declared. He was enjoying this. She realized. The power, the ability to invade her life with impunity. They trooped back inside, boots muddy on her clean floors. Clara held her breath as they moved through the kitchen, opening every door, peering into every corner. One man's foot scuffed the edge of the rug covering the cellar door, and her heart nearly stopped. But then Watson said, Nothing here, Mayor, maybe. A crash from the parlor cut him off. They found Hutchinson had accidentally knocked over her china cabinet, the few good pieces she'd inherited from her mother now scattered in fragments. Clumsy of me, he said, not bothering to hide his satisfaction. You really should be more careful with your things. Mrs. Whitmore. Accidents happen so easily to a woman alone. The threat was naked now, all pretense abandoned. Clara's finger tightened on the shotgun trigger, and for a moment she genuinely considered whether killing him would be worth hanging for. Watson seemed to sense the danger. We should go. Nothing here, Mayor. Wild goose chase. Perhaps. Hutchinson stepped close to Clara, close enough that she could smell the pomade in his hair. But I'll be watching. Widow. One mistake, one slip, and I'll know. And then we'll discuss your future in this town more thoroughly. After they left, Clara stood in the wreckage of her home, shaking with rage and delayed terror. The cellar door opened, and Taza emerged, his face dark with fury. Should have killed them all, he said flatly. Yes, because 5 dead men on my property would improve things immensely. But the sarcasm lacked bite. She was tired, so tired of being afraid, of being powerless. Taza surveyed the damage, then began quietly picking up the broken china. The gesture, small and domestic, nearly broke her. Cannot stay, he said. Every day brings more danger. I know. Clara knelt to help him, gathering fragments of her mother's teapot. I've made my decision. He looked up sharply. Clara? I'll need 3 days to settle Thomas's affairs properly, gather what supplies we need. She met his eyes steadily. Can you get us to this valley? Safely? Yes. The word came out fierce, triumphant. No ways army cannot follow. Hard travel, but I'm not afraid of hard. Clara stood, dusting off her hands. I'm afraid of dying slowly in this town, watching Hutchinson circle closer until... She shuddered. 3 days. Then we leave. Taza stood too, reaching for her, then stopping, always careful of boundaries, of her choice. She closed the distance herself, stepping into his arms, feeling the solid warmth of him. Regrets? He asked against her hair. Only that I didn't shoot Hutchinson when I had the chance. His laugh rumbled through his chest. Fierce woman. Apache will say I stole you, but truth is you steal yourself. I just show direction. They stood there among the broken pieces of her old life, holding each other, while outside the wind picked up, carrying the scent of sage and possibility. The next 3 days required all Clara's strength. She visited the bank, withdrawing her small savings under the suspicious eye of the clerk. She sold what she could quietly. Thomas's watch to a traveling merchant, her mother's silver hair combs to the Mexican laundress who'd always admired them. At the cemetery, she knelt by Thomas's grave one last time. I'm not abandoning you, she whispered to the stone. I'm choosing to live. You'd understand. You always understood. She left his ring on the marker. Let the town make of that what they would. The hardest part was maintaining normalcy while preparing for flight. She made preserves that were really trail food, mended clothes while reinforcing them for hard travel, gathered herbs that would serve as medicine on the journey. And each night, she and Taza planned. He drew maps in charcoal on her kitchen table, showing hidden springs, safe caves, paths known only to Apache and eagles. They would travel at night mostly, rest in hidden places during the day. The journey would take at least 2 weeks, maybe more depending on weather and army patrols. We'll be cold in mountains, he warned. Snow comes early this year. I've been cold before. Clara was altering one of Thomas's coats to fit Taza, her needle flying. What about your people? Won't they see me as enemy? Some, yes, but Apache respect courage. Woman who saves warrior, travels hard path. They will see strength, not just white skin. He paused. And I will protect you, always. The final night. Clara barely slept. Everything that could be prepared was ready, packs hidden in the shed, provisions carefully distributed, her father's medical supplies condensed to essentials. She'd even written a letter to Sheriff Watson, to be found after they left, stating she was traveling to California to stay with fictional cousins. Let them make of that what they would. She dozed fitfully in the kitchen chair, unwilling to lie in the bed she'd shared with Thomas on this last night. When dawn grayed the windows, she rose and made one final round of the house. Her fingers traced the doorframe Thomas had carved, the windowsill where she'd watched so many sunsets, the kitchen table where her father had taught her to read. Goodbye, she whispered to the walls that had sheltered her grief. Thank you. Then she descended to the cellar where Taza waited, dressed in Thomas's altered clothes, his pack ready. He looked at her searching, and she knew he was giving her one last chance to change her mind. Instead, She shouldered her own pack, heavy with medical supplies and the few treasures she couldn't leave, her father's surgical instruments, her mother's journal, a photograph of Thomas she'd wrapped in oilcloth. "Ready?" Taza asked. "Ready." They slipped out through the cellar's outside entrance just as true dawn approached, two shadows moving across the desert, leaving behind the known world for the vast uncertainty ahead. Clara looked back once at the house, small and weathered against the brightening sky, then turned her face to the mountains, where somewhere, perhaps, a new life waited. The desert received them in silence, and they disappeared into its vastness like smoke into wind, while behind them the town of Millbrook began to stir, unaware that its widow had chosen resurrection over a living death. The desert transformed under darkness into an alien landscape of silver shadows and hidden sounds. They'd been traveling for 3 nights, resting during the scorching days in whatever shade Taza could find. Overhangs of red rock, clusters of mesquite, once in a cave that smelled of bat guano and ancient water. Clara's feet had blistered, healed, and blistered again. Her riding skirts, even modified for travel, caught on every thorn and rock. But she didn't complain, sensing Taza's constant vigilance, the way he tested the wind and studied tracks she couldn't see. "Drink," he said, passing her the water skin as they paused beneath a massive cottonwood. The stars blazed overhead, so bright they cast shadows. She took a careful sip. Water was life here, and they had to make it last between the hidden springs Taza knew. How much farther to the next water? Half-night's walk, but... He frowned, studying the horizon. Something wrong. Birds flew early from roost. Could be cat, could be men. Clara's hand went to the Colt revolver at her hip. Thomas's gun, which Taza had insisted she wear. Army? Maybe, or others. His expression darkened. Bounty hunters use Apache scouts. Traders who sell their people for white man's gold. They know our ways. They altered course, adding miles to avoid potential danger. Clara's legs trembled with exhaustion by the time Taza finally led them up a narrow deer trail to a shallow cave. Dawn was breaking, painting the desert in shades of rose and gold. "Rest here," he said, but she could see the worry in his eyes as he scanned their back trail. Clara collapsed gratefully on the sandy floor, every muscle screaming. She watched Taza cover their tracks, arrange dry brush to hide the cave entrance, his movements economical despite his own fatigue. "You're still favoring that side," she observed. "Let me check the wound." He submitted to her ministrations, and she was pleased to see it healing cleanly. The intimacy of tending him here, in this wild place, was different from the shed. There was no pretense now, no barriers between patient and nurse, just 2 people depending on each other for survival. "Tell me again about the valley," Clara said, needing the distraction of hope. Taza's expression softened. "Water runs all year, cold from mountain snow. Trees give shade, oak, pine, juniper. In spring, whole meadow turns yellow with flowers. Like sunrise on earth, can build house there, small but strong. Keep garden, maybe goats." "Goats?" Clara smiled despite her exhaustion. "I've never kept goats. Good animals, give milk, meat, hide. Stubborn like Apache woman I know." She swatted his shoulder gently. "I'm not stubborn. I'm determined." Same word, different tongue. But he was smiling too, that rare expression that transformed his face. "Clara," he paused, seeming to wrestle with words. "Want you to know, if something happens. If I fall, you go on. Follow Morning Star until you hit Mexican Road. Then, nothing's going to happen." She cut him off, fear sharp in her throat. "We're going to reach that valley. Build that house. Raise those stubborn goats." He cupped her face in his hands. "Promise me, if trouble comes, you run. No looking back. Taza, promise." She saw the fierce protectiveness in his eyes and knew arguing was futile. "I promise to survive," she said carefully. "Whatever that takes." It wasn't the answer he wanted, but it was all she could give. They slept through the heat of the day, curled together for warmth as the cave held the night's chill. Clara woke to Taza's hand over her mouth, his body tense against hers. She heard it then, horses, moving slowly up the trail below. Through a gap in the brush, she glimpsed them. 4 riders, all Apache, moving with the easy grace of expert trackers, renegade scouts, just as Taza had feared. One dismounted, studying the ground where they'd left the main trail. Taza's hand moved slowly to his knife. Clara eased the Colt from its holster, heart hammering. If the scouts found them trapped in this cave, the tracker below called something in Apache. Taza's jaw tightened, and Clara knew without understanding the words that their trail had been discovered. The scouts began moving up the deer path, weapons ready. "When I move, you run." Taza breathed in her ear. "Up mountain, don't stop." Before she could protest, he was gone, flowing out of the cave like smoke, his war cry splitting the air. Clara heard shouts, the clash of bodies, a gunshot that echoed off the canyon walls. Every instinct screamed at her to help, but she'd promised to survive. She burst from the cave, scrambling up the loose shale toward higher ground. A figure loomed in her path. One of the scouts had circled around. Clara didn't think, just raised the Colt and fired. The man spun away, clutching his shoulder. More shots below. The sound of fighting. Clara kept climbing, her breath tearing at her lungs, until she reached a cluster of boulders. She turned, gun ready, searching for Taza. He was coming up the slope, but moving wrong, too slow. Blood streaked his left arm. 2 scouts pursued him, and Clara saw with cold clarity that he wouldn't make it. She braced the Colt on the boulder, her father's voice steady in her memory. "Breathe out slowly. Squeeze, don't jerk. Aim for center mass." The gun bucked in her hands. One scout stumbled. She fired again, and he went down. The second scout dove for cover, giving Taza time to reach her position. "I told you run," he gasped, but there was pride mixed with the anger. "I told you I'd survive," Clara retorted, watching for movement below. "Are there more?" "1, maybe 2, but horses scattered. We'll take time to gather." He was already moving, pulling her along the ridge. Must reach next water before they regroup. They fled through the rising heat, Taza leading them through terrain that seemed impossible. Narrow ledges above dizzying drops, passages through rock that barely admitted their bodies. Clara's world narrowed to the next handhold, the next breath, the next step. Hours later, when the sun was a hammer blow from directly overhead, they tumbled down a scree slope to a hidden spring. Clara plunged her face into the blessed coolness, drinking deep, while Taza stood guard. "Let me see your arm," she demanded when her immediate thirst was satisfied. A bullet had gouged a furrow along his bicep, painful but not serious. Clara cleaned and bound it with precious medical supplies, trying not to think how fast their resources were dwindling. "You shoot well for white woman," Taza observed, watching her work. "You fight well for a man who was half dead 2 weeks ago." Clara countered, "We make a good team." Something shifted in his expression. "Clara, what you did, staying to fight, was brave and foolish, and—" He touched her face with his good hand. "And I see why spirits brought us together. You have warrior's heart." "I have a survivor's heart," Clara corrected, but she leaned into his touch. "There's a difference." "No," he said simply. "Same thing." They couldn't rest long. The scouts would find their trail eventually, and the spring was too exposed for a defensive position. As shadows began to lengthen, they moved on, pushing deeper into the maze of canyons and mesas. That night, they made cold camp in a thicket of juniper, not daring a fire that might draw attention. Clara chewed dried meat mechanically, every muscle in her body one large ache. She'd never been so exhausted, so filthy, so far from everything she'd known, and yet, watching Taza's profile against the stars, she felt more alive than she had in years. The constant danger had stripped away everything unnecessary, leaving only what mattered: the next breath, the next heartbeat, the fierce determination to reach safety together. "How many more days?" she asked quietly. "If we push hard, No more trouble. 5, maybe 6 to the valley. He looked at her, assessing. You are strong, but body has limits. Need rest soon. Real rest. I can make it. I know. His confidence warmed her more than any fire. Tomorrow we cross Army patrol route. Most dangerous part. After that, country gets rougher but safer. My people avoid. Army avoids. Only eagles and spirits. Clara shifted closer to him, seeking his warmth as the desert night turned cold. Tell me about the spirits. The Apache ones. So he did, speaking quietly of mountain spirits and sun spirits, of Coyote the trickster and white-painted woman who brought fertility to the land. His voice painted pictures of a world where everything was alive, connected, sacred in ways her Christianity had never quite captured. Your God lives in sky, he said. Our spirits live in everything, rock, tree, water, wind, cannot escape them because cannot escape world. And do they approve of us? An Apache warrior and a white widow? Taza was quiet for a long moment. Spirits care nothing for color of skin or words we speak, care only for truth of heart. You saved enemy, risked all for stranger. Spirits see this, honor this. He paused. My grandmother would say you have Apache soul and white body, is why you could hear my need across divide of peoples. Clara thought about that as drowsiness began to claim her. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps the borders that seemed so solid in town meant nothing in the vastness of creation. Here, under infinite stars, with danger all around and only trust between them, the distinctions that had seemed so important faded like morning mist. Taza? She murmured, half asleep. I'm glad the spirits brought us together. She felt him pull her closer, his lips brushing her hair. As am I, small warrior, as am I. They woke before dawn to the sound of horses again, but distant this time, moving along the army road far below their hidden camp. Taza watched the dust plume of their passage with satisfaction. Patrol heading to Fort Grant. Will not be back this way for days. He helped Clara to her feet, noting how she bit back a groan of pain. Today we go slower. Reach good shelter by dark. Can rest better. I'm fine, Clara insisted, but she didn't protest when he took some weight from her pack, adding it to his own. They climbed through the morning, the landscape changing as they gained elevation. The sparse desert vegetation gave way to scattered pines. The air grew cooler, and Clara could smell water on the wind. Not the mineral scent of desert springs, but something greener, more alive. By afternoon, they reached a high meadow where a stream chuckled over smooth stones. Taza led her to a place where ancient cottonwoods created a natural shelter, their massive trunks forming a protective circle. Old Apache camp, he explained, showing her the fire-blackened stones, the subtle markers that meant safe haven. Used for generations, scouts will not come here, is forbidden to betray old camps. Clara sank gratefully onto soft grass, the first comfortable surface she'd felt in days. It's beautiful, she said, looking around at the dappled sunlight, the clear water, the sense of peace that permeated the place. Rest, Taza said, already gathering wood for a small fire. Tonight we eat hot food, wash properly. Tomorrow. He smiled. Tomorrow we are only 3 days from new life. The morning brought unexpected company. As Clara and Taza prepared to leave the sanctuary of the old camp, they heard voices on the trail below. Not Apache, but English, mixed with Spanish and the unmistakable whimpering of a child in distress. Taza motioned for silence, moving like a shadow to observe. He returned with a troubled expression. Mexican family, wagon stuck in ravine, wolves circling. Clara was already reaching for her medical supplies. Are they hurt? Child sick? Parents tried a free wagon, but... He shook his head. Wolves grow bold. Soon will attack. They looked at each other, both understanding the risk. Revealing themselves to anyone was dangerous, but Clara couldn't ignore a sick child any more than she could have left Taza to die. We help, Taza said, reading her face. Carefully. They approached from downwind, and Clara saw the situation was desperate. A rickety wagon had slipped off the narrow trail, one wheel hanging over empty space. A Mexican man struggled with the terrified mules while his wife clutched a small girl who burned with fever. 3 wolves paced at the edge of the clearing, yellow eyes calculating. Taza moved first, appearing between the wolves and the family like an apparition. His war cry sent the predators scattering, though Clara could see them regrouping in the shadows. The Mexican couple screamed at his appearance, the man reaching for an ancient musket. "Stop!" Clara called in Spanish, stepping into view. "We're here to help." The tableau froze, the Mexican family staring in shock at the unlikely pair. Taza keeping watch on the wolves, Clara standing between them all with her hands raised peacefully. "Please," she continued in her careful Spanish. "Your daughter is sick. I have medicine?" The mother's need overrode her fear. "Please, Senora, she burns with fever for 2 days. We were going to Tucson for doctor, but—" "I am a doctor," Clara said, stretching the truth only slightly. "Let me see her." The next hour blurred together, Clara examining the child. Bad water fever. Treatable, but serious. Taza using Apache ingenuity and Mexican muscle to lever the wagon back onto solid ground. The wolves driven off by well-placed stones and fierce shouts. Through it all, the family watched them with a mixture of gratitude and bewilderment. Apache and white woman traveling together. The father, who gave his name as Miguel Herrera, muttered, "The world turns upside down." "The world has always been upside down," his wife Rosa replied sharply. "They saved Anita. Nothing else matters." As Clara worked, carefully dosing the child with willow bark and precious quinine, she learned their story. The Herreras had been burned out by American settlers who wanted their water rights, forced to flee with whatever they could carry. They were heading to Tucson, where Miguel had cousins, hoping to start over. "Is all we can do," Rosa said, smoothing her daughter's hair. "Start over. Try again. What else is there?" Clara met Taza's eyes over the child's fevered form. What else indeed? By evening, Anita's fever had broken. The Herreras insisted on sharing their meager meal, beans and tortillas and dried peppers that made Clara's eyes water. As they ate, an unspoken understanding grew. These people, displaced and desperate, would not betray those who had saved their child. "You go to the Hidden Valley," Miguel said quietly. It wasn't a question. "Near Agua Prieta. We know of it." Taza tensed, but Miguel raised a peaceful hand. "Is good place? Safe place. My cousin's brother-in-law. He trades there sometimes. Says the Apache woman Maria makes all welcome who come in peace. You could come with us?" Clara found herself saying. Safety in numbers. Rosa and Miguel exchanged glances. "You are kind, Senora, but we have family waiting. And you—" She looked between Clara and Taza with knowing eyes. "You need to move fast. Yes, we would slow you down." It was true, but Clara still felt reluctant to leave them. "The child needs rest. Another day." "We rest today. Move tomorrow," Miguel decided. "Is good camp here, and now we know to boil water better. Thanks to you." That night, they shared the camp. 2 small fires burning as cultures mingled carefully. Anita, weak but lucid, stared at Taza with the fearless curiosity of children. "You're Apache," she said in Spanish. "Papa says Apache are dangerous." "Yes," Taza replied seriously. "Very dangerous to enemies. But you are not enemy. You are a small girl who needs protection. So, to you, I am not dangerous." Anita considered this logic and seemed satisfied. "The Senora is your wife." Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. But Taza answered calmly, "She will be, when we reach safe place." The simple declaration made Clara's heart race. They hadn't spoken of formal arrangements, of what exactly they were building together. But hearing him claim her so matter-of-factly, with such certainty, filled her with a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. Later, as the Herreras slept, Clara and Taza sat together watching the stars wheel overhead. "You told them I would be your wife," she said softly. "Yes. Is truth? No? Or—" Uncertainty crept into his voice. White women need different words. Ceremonies. Clara thought of her wedding to Thomas, the church, the flowers, the whole town watching. It had been beautiful and proper and had changed nothing when death came calling. "I need truth," she said finally. "The rest is just decoration." Taza took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "Then know this truth. You are my woman. I am your man. The spirits see it. The earth knows it. When we reach valley, we'll make ceremony for others to see, but between us is already done." Clara squeezed his hand, feeling the calluses and scars, the strength and gentleness combined. "Already done," she agreed. Morning brought parting. The Herreras were effusive in their gratitude, pressing on them a small sack of cornmeal and dried beans despite Clara's protests. "For the wedding feast," Rosa insisted with a knowing smile. "And remember, if you ever need anything in Tucson, find Miguel Herrera. We do not forget." As the wagon creaked away, Anita waved from the back until they were out of sight. Clara watched them go with a mix of worry and hope. The world was hard for all of them, Apache, Mexican, American, trying to survive in a land that seemed to want none of them. "Come," Taza said gently. "Time grows short." They made good time that day, following game trails higher into the mountains. The landscape transformed around them. Pine forests thick with needle-carpeted silence. Meadows where elk had grazed. Streams running cold and clear from snowmelt above. "Is beautiful." Clara breathed, pausing to take in a vista of peaks marching into blue distance. "Yes, and dangerous." Taza pointed to scratches on a nearby tree, far above Clara's head. "Bear, big one. Must be careful now." As if to emphasize his point, they came across the remains of an elk calf an hour later, only partially consumed. Taza read the signs with growing concern. Grizzly, young male, pushed out by bigger bears. Hungry, angry, bad combination. They altered course, but the bears' territory seemed to overlap their intended path. As afternoon shadows lengthened, Taza made a decision. "We climb. Bear won't follow to rocks." The climb was brutal. Clara's hands were soon scraped raw, her legs trembling with effort. But Taza was right as they gained elevation. Scrambling up a series of ledges, the forest fell away below. They reached a narrow shelf just as the sun touched the western peaks. And there he was. The grizzly emerged from the trees below, massive and golden in the slanted light. He rose on hind legs, testing the wind, and even from their height Clara could see his impressive size. "Magnificent," she whispered. "Yes, and deadly." Taza had his rifle ready, though they both knew it would be little use against such a creature. "We wait. He will move on." They made cold camp on the ledge, pressed against the rock face, watching the bear patrol below. As darkness fell, they could hear him moving through the brush, occasionally huffing in frustration at the lost trail. "He's like Hutchinson," Clara said suddenly, circling, waiting for weakness. Taza made a sound that might have been amusement. "Bear more honest, wants food, not power. Simpler enemy?" Sleep was impossible with death prowling below. They huddled together for warmth, speaking in whispers of everything and nothing. Clara learned that Taza's full name meant gift of the mountain spirits, that he'd killed his first deer at 12, that his favorite season was spring when the desert bloomed. She told him about watching her father work, hands gentle even with the roughest patience, about her mother's garden, rows of vegetables and herbs that fed body and soul, about the first time she'd seen Thomas, how he'd tipped his hat and smiled like sunrise. "Does it hurt?" Taza asked. "Speaking of the dead." "It used to, now." Clara considered. "Now it feels like honoring them. They're part of my path to you." As dawn approached, painting the peaks rose and gold, the bear finally moved on. They descended carefully, every sense alert, but found only tracks leading away down the valley. 2 more days of hard travel, they told themselves. 2 more days until sanctuary. But the mountains had other plans. The storm struck that afternoon with little warning, black clouds boiling over the peaks, temperature plummeting. the first fat snowflakes falling like warnings of worse to come. "Too early for this," Taza muttered, scanning for shelter. "Mountain spirits angry today." They found partial refuge beneath an overhang, but the wind drove snow in swirling curtains. Clara shivered uncontrollably despite Taza's arms around her, their shared body heat barely enough against the unseasonable cold. "Should have stayed in town," she said through chattering teeth, trying for humor. "Warm house, soft bed, only the slow death of the soul to worry about. Rather die free than live in cage," Taza replied, pulling her closer. "But we'll not die. Too stubborn. Both of us." The storm raged through the night and into the next day. They ate sparingly, melted snow for water, and waited. Clara dozed fitfully, dreaming of warmth and safety, always waking to cold and Taza's steadfast presence. On the second night, the snow stopped. Stars emerged, brilliant in the clear air, and the temperature dropped even further. Clara couldn't feel her feet anymore, and a dangerous lassitude was creeping through her limbs. "Clara!" Taza's voice seemed to come from far away. "Must move. Cannot sleep." She tried to respond, but her thoughts moved like cold honey, distantly. She felt him lifting her, heard him speaking in Apache, prayers or curses. She couldn't tell. Warmth, sudden and blessed, surrounding her. She forced her eyes open to find they were in a shallow cave, a small fire crackling. Taza was removing her boots, his face tight with worry. "How?" "Old hunting shelter. Almost missed it in snow." He worked her feet gently, bringing painful circulation back. "You frightened me, small warrior. Thought spirits might take you." "Too stubborn," Clara managed. "You said so yourself." Relief flickered in his eyes. "Yes, good." The cave was small but dry, supplied with wood by previous occupants. As feeling returned to her extremities in pins and needles, Clara became aware of how close they were, how the firelight played across Taza's features, how his hands on her feet had shifted from medical to something more intimate. "We're going to make it," she said. Not quite a question. "Yes," his hands stilled. "Tomorrow, if weather holds, we reach the valley. New life begins." "It's already begun," Clara said. She reached for him, drawing him close. And this time when they kissed, it was with the desperate joy of survival, of choosing each other against all odds. They made love there in the cave, while outside snow reflected starlight and somewhere wolves sang to the moon. It was nothing like her wedding night with Thomas. No soft bed, no rose petals, no pretense of civility. It was raw and real and theirs, a claiming and a promise sealed in flesh and fire. Afterward, they lay entwined, watching the fire burn low. "No regrets?" Taza asked, echoing his earlier question. Clara thought of everything she'd left behind, everything she'd once thought mattered. Then she looked at this man who'd shown her what it meant to be truly alive, who saw her strength instead of her brokenness. "No regrets," she said firmly. "Only gratitude." Tomorrow they would reach the valley. Tomorrow they would begin building their unlikely life together. But tonight, in this cave carved from stone and time, they were already home. Dawn broke clear and cold, the storm having blown itself out in the night. Clara woke to find Taza already alert, listening to something she couldn't hear. His body was tense against hers, hand moving slowly toward his rifle. "What is it?" she whispered. "Horses, many, moving fast from the north." He was already pulling on his boots, movements quick but quiet. "Get ready, we may need to run." Clara's heart sank, so close to sanctuary. And now this. She dressed quickly, wincing at the cold touch of leather and cloth. Her body ached from yesterday's ordeal, but adrenaline was already sharpening her senses. They packed in silence, erasing signs of their presence with practiced efficiency. Just as they prepared to leave the cave, the sound of horses grew louder, accompanied by voices, English voices, hard and professional. "Bounty hunters," Taza said grimly. "Maybe same ones tracking us, maybe others. Either way." A shout cut him off. Someone had found their tracks leading to the cave, despite the snow. Clara heard the metallic sound of weapons being readied, boots scrambling over rocks. "The woman's with him," a voice called out. "Hutchinson was right. $500 for the Apache, $200 for her. Boys!" Clara felt sick. Hutchinson had put a bounty on her, too. She'd become as much an outlaw as Taza in the eyes of the law. "Back of cave," Taza said urgently. "Small passage. Leads out other side of ridge." You knew. Always know 2 ways out. He pushed her toward the narrow opening she hadn't noticed in the dark. "Go. I follow." The passage was barely wide enough for her body. Rock scraping against her as she squeezed through. Behind her, she heard shouts as the hunters reached the cave mouth. A gunshot echoed in the confined space, deafeningly loud. "Taza, keep going!" She emerged gasping on a steep slope of loose shale. Taza came through seconds later, blood streaming from a gash on his temple where rock had splintered from a bullet impact. "Down!" he commanded, and they half ran, half slid down the treacherous surface as more shots rang out behind them. The hunters had to go around the ridge to follow, buying them precious minutes. But Clara could hear the baying of dogs now. Bloodhounds, probably. That would follow their scent relentlessly. They ran through snow-laden pines, branches whipping at their faces, breath clouding in the frigid air. Clara's world narrowed to Taza's back, to placing her feet where he had stepped, to staying upright when every muscle screamed for rest. A ravine opened before them, a frozen stream at its bottom. Taza didn't hesitate, leaping down to the ice. Clara followed, slipping, catching herself on frozen branches. They ran upstream, feet breaking through ice into shocking cold water. But it would slow the dogs. "There!" Taza pointed to where the ravine narrowed, walls rising sheer on either side. "Climb!" It seemed impossible, but fear lent her strength. They chimneyed up between the walls, backs against one side, feet against the other, inching higher while below the sound of pursuit grew closer. Clara's arms shook with strain. 20 feet up, 30, muscles burning, certain she would fall. Then Taza's hand caught hers, hauling her over the lip onto blessed flat ground. No time to rest. They were on a narrow mesa, scattered with wind-twisted pines and house-sized boulders. Taza led them into the maze of stone, finally stopping in a defensive position where massive rocks formed a natural fortress. "Here," he gasped, checking his rifle. "We make stand." Clara drew the Colt, checking the loads. 5 shots left, plus Taza's rifle and his traditional weapons. Against how many hunters? She could hear them now. Dogs casting about where they'd left the ravine, men cursing the difficult terrain. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I brought this on us. If I hadn't—" "No." Taza's voice was fierce. "You brought nothing but light. These men chase money, not justice. Would hunt me anyway." He touched her face briefly. "Whatever comes, spirit's no truth. We chose love over fear. Is good death if needed." "I prefer a good life," Clara said, trying for lightness. "Those goats aren't going to raise themselves." His smile flashed briefly. "Stubborn woman. Yes, we live. But first..." The dogs found their trail, baying with triumph. Men scrambled up the ravine walls, spreading out to surround their position. Clara counted at least 6, all well-armed, moving with military precision. "Apache!" The leader's voice boomed across the rocks. "We know you're there. Got you boxed proper. Come out peaceful-like and we'll make it quick. The woman, too, if she's smart." "Counteroffer," Clara called back, surprising herself. "You leave now and we don't turn this into a bloodbath. Some of you have families, I'd guess. Do they know you hunt women for money? Bounty's legal. Woman! You're harboring a murderer. That makes you fair game. I'm harboring a man defending his homeland." Clara shot back. "But I doubt you care about such distinctions." Whispered consultations among the hunters. Then, "Last chance. Throw out your weapons and surrender." Taza caught her eye, mouthing, "Ready?" She nodded, steadying the Colt on the rock before her. The morning sun was climbing, throwing sharp shadows across the mesa. If they were going to die, at least it would be in beauty. Together. The attack came from 3 directions at once. Clara fired, saw a man spin away clutching his shoulder. Taza's rifle cracked, another hunter diving for cover. Then everyone was shooting, bullets whining off rocks, chips of stone stinging exposed skin. Clara lost track of shots fired, of time passing. The world became smoke and noise, muzzle flashes and the taste of gunpowder. A hunter tried to flank them. She put a bullet in his leg. Taza fought like the warrior he was, rifle giving way to bow when ammunition ran low, every arrow finding its mark. Then, sudden as summer lightning, new war cries split the air, not from the hunters, from beyond them, echoing off the canyon walls. Apache warriors, appearing like ghosts from the rocks, fell upon the bounty hunters from behind. The tide turned in moments. Caught between 2 forces, the hunters scattered. Some ran, others tried to fight, but they were outnumbered now and outmatched in this terrain. In minutes, it was over. 2 hunters lay dead. Others fled or surrendered, and the mesa fell silent, except for the wind. An older Apache warrior approached their position, hands empty of weapons. Taza stood slowly, speaking in his language. The conversation was lengthy, with many gestures toward Clara. She understood none of it but felt the weight of judgment in the warrior's eyes. Finally, the older man spoke in accented English. "I am Nana, war chief of the Shihen. This one," he indicated Taza, "says you are his woman, says you saved him, fought beside him. This is truth." "It is truth," Clara said, standing straight despite her exhaustion. "He is my man. I go where he goes." Nana studied her, eyes sharp in his weathered face. "White women do not choose Apache life, his hard way. I've lived the white way." Clara replied, "It brought only death and sorrow. This man showed me life, hard or easy, I choose it." Something that might have been approval flickered across Nana's features. He spoke again to Taza, then addressed them both. "The hidden valley is known to us. Maria Flores speaks truth. Those who come in peace are welcome, but you bring war behind you. These hunters will tell others. Then we disappear." Taza said firmly, "Become like smoke, in valley. We are invisible." Nana nodded slowly. "We go there also, for winter camp, safety in numbers. You ride with us." It wasn't a request, but Clara felt relief flood through her. The Apache band had horses, captured from the hunters, and supplies. More importantly, they had knowledge of every trail and hiding place between here and the valley. As they prepared to depart, one of the captured hunters, a young man, barely out of his teens, caught Clara's attention. "Ma'am," he said desperately, "you're white, Christian. They'll kill us all, won't they?" Clara looked at him, seeing her own former fears reflected in his eyes. "Did you come here to kill us?" "It was just money, good money. I got family. As did the Apache you hunt, as do I." She softened slightly at his youth. "They're more merciful than your kind. Boy, you'll likely be released at the border. Take it as a lesson and find better work." They rode through the day, the Apache band moving like ghosts through the landscape. Clara, mounted on a sturdy Mustang, marveled at their skill, how they found paths invisible to her eyes, how they communicated in gestures and bird calls, how they seemed part of the land itself. Taza rode beside her when terrain allowed, pointing out landmarks, teaching her words in Apache. The other warriors watched her with curiosity and varying degrees of suspicion, but none challenged Nana's decision. As sunset approached, they descended into a hidden canyon where a stream ran between cottonwoods. The band made camp with practiced efficiency. Guards posted, horses tended, small fires kindled in spots where smoke would dissipate unseen. An Apache woman approached Clara, young, perhaps 20 winters, with intelligent eyes and work-strong hands. "I am Lozin," she said in careful English. "Warrior woman, sister to Victoria." She gestured to a powerful-looking man conferring with Nana. "Taza says you have medicine hands. Some knowledge." Clara admitted, "My father taught me. Come, boy wounded in fight needs tending." Clara found herself accepted. if not embraced. As she worked on the injured youth, the bullet had passed through cleanly, and she was able to clean and bind it properly. Other warriors watched, impressed by her skill and gentle efficiency. "Good hands," Lawson commented. "Steady, like warriors' hands must be." As darkness fell, the band shared a simple meal. Clara sat with Taza, aware of the careful space the others maintained around them. Not hostile, exactly, but watchful. She was still other, still the enemy's daughter, even if she was under their protection. "They will accept in time," Taza said quietly, "when they see your true heart. And if they don't, then we make own band. Apache way allows this. Those who cannot follow war trail find other paths." He took her hand. "Already we are band of 2 is enough to start." Later, Lawson approached again. "Nana wishes to speak, both of you." They found the war chief sitting apart, studying the stars. He gestured for them to sit, his lined face thoughtful in the firelight. "Tomorrow we reach the valley," he said without preamble. "Winter comes early this year. My band will camp there until spring thaw." He looked at Taza. "You fought well today. Your woman also. But fighting days must end sometime. What skills do you bring to peaceful life?" Taza straightened. "No horses. Hunting, building, can scout, trade. Will work hard for place among people. And you?" Nana's attention shifted to Clara. "White woman in Apache camp causes problems. Soldiers come looking. Agents make trouble. What do you bring besides danger?" Clara met his gaze steadily. "I bring healing hands and knowledge of white man's medicine. I can read, write, speak 3 languages. Know herbs, surgery, birthing. In the valley, people will need these skills, Apache and Mexican alike." She paused. "And yes, I bring danger, but also bridge between worlds, if people willing to cross." Nana was quiet for a long moment. "Maria Flores says similar things. Has made good life with her trader husband, perhaps." He shrugged. "Times change. Maybe old ways must bend or break. We shall see." Dismissed, they returned to their place by the small fire. Around them, the camp settled for the night, soft voices. A baby's cry quickly soothed. The eternal sounds of humanity seeking comfort in darkness. "One more day," Clara said wonderingly. "After everything, just one more day." "Beginning, not ending," Taza corrected. "Hard work waits, building home, making peace with neighbors. Learning new ways while keeping old. Will not be easy." "I'm not looking for easy," Clara said. "I'm looking for real, for true, for—" She gestured helplessly, unable to find words. "For life lived whole," Taza finished. "Yes, this we build together." They slept under stars and pine boughs, surrounded by watchful warriors, while somewhere behind them, the white world raged at their escape. But here, now, there was only the steady breathing of horses, the distant call of an owl, and the solid warmth of 2 people who had chosen love over every law that said they couldn't. Tomorrow the valley waited, sanctuary and challenge combined. Tomorrow they would begin the hard work of building a life that belonged to neither world and to both. But tonight, Clara thought as sleep claimed her, tonight they were simply alive, together and free. The mountains stood witness, ancient and patient, having seen such stories before. Love that crossed battle lines, courage that defied convention, hope that bloomed in the harshest ground, in their stone memory. This was just one more tale of humans reaching across the divide, choosing connection over conflict. One more day until sanctuary. One more day until home. The valley revealed itself like a secret whispered by the mountains. As they crested the final ridge, Clara caught her breath at the sight below, a hidden basin cradled by protective peaks, where a stream wound silver through meadows and groves of oak and pine. Smoke rose from several dwellings scattered along the water, and she could see figures moving between gardens and corrals. "There," Taza said simply, but his voice held years of longing. They descended as a group, Nana's warriors spreading out in peaceful formation. Children appeared first, running alongside the horses with curious eyes. Then adults emerged from homes, Apache, Mexican, and Clara was surprised to see even a few Americans, All watched their arrival with careful interest. A woman strode forward to meet them, Apache features softened by Mexican heritage, strength evident in every line of her body. This had to be Maria Flores. She greeted Nana with respect, then turned sharp eyes on Clara and Taza. "So," she said in accented English, "you're the ones bringing trouble to our peaceful valley." Before Clara could respond, Maria smiled. "Good. Peace without occasional trouble is just another word for death." "Welcome." The abandoned silver mine shaft where the final confrontation took place stood at the valley's eastern edge, its old timbers bleached white by weather. Clara stood before it now, 3 days after their arrival, Thomas's wedding ring in her palm. "Here?" Taza asked gently. She nodded, unable to speak past the tightness in her throat. This was the last ritual, the final letting go. She'd kept the ring through everything: flight, pursuit, the promise of new love. Now it was time. She knelt at the mine's entrance, digging a small hole in the rocky soil. The ring glinted as she placed it in the earth, a last connection to her former life. "Thank you," she whispered to Thomas's memory, "for teaching me to love, for showing me strength I didn't know I had. Be at peace." As she covered the ring with earth, she felt something shift inside, not forgetting, but releasing. The past would always be part of her, but it no longer held her prisoner. Taza helped her to her feet, and they stood together as the sun painted the mountains crimson and gold. Tomorrow there would be work. Maria had already offered space for a small cabin near the healing house where Clara could practice her medicine. The valley needed her skills, and she needed purpose beyond mere survival. "The old ways say we cannot change the past," Taza said, carving a small mark on a nearby stone. An Apache symbol she was learning meant journey's end. "But we can choose which past we carry forward. You choose well, small warrior." The great storm struck that night, as if the mountains themselves wanted to test their resolve one final time. Wind howled through the valley like vengeful spirits, and lightning turned night to sudden, stark day. The partially built cabin shook under the assault, and Clara found herself pressed against Taza in their makeshift shelter, listening to the world rage outside. "The spirits are angry," she said, half joking. "No," Taza replied seriously. "They celebrate. Big storm means big change. Old washed away, new can grow." By morning, the storm had passed, leaving crystal air and snow dusting the peaks like blessing. The stream ran high and muddy, and several trees had fallen, but the valley had weathered it as it had weathered countless storms before. The community came together to repair damage, and Clara found herself truly welcomed for the first time. She worked alongside Apache women reinforcing flood barriers, shared medical knowledge with the Mexican curandera, even helped the American trader's wife birth a difficult baby. By sunset, exhausted but exhilarated, she felt the truth of it. She belonged. That night, by their fire, under stars so bright they seemed touchable, Maria Flores visited. The older woman studied them both with knowing eyes. "You've decided, then, to stay, to build, to become part of this place?" "We have," Clara answered for them both. "Good. Then Sunday. We make it proper. My husband will speak Christian words if you want. I know Apache ceremony. We blend both. Make something new," she grinned. "Like everything in this valley, neither one thing nor other, but somehow working." As she left, Clara turned to Taza. "Sunday, 3 days. Too long," he said, pulling her close. "But we waited this long. The ceremony, when it came, was unlike anything Clara could have imagined." They stood by the stream at sunset, surrounded by the strange family they'd found. Apache warriors, Mexican farmers, American outcasts, all bound together by their need for sanctuary. Clara wore a dress gifted by the women, Apache design with Mexican embroidery. Taza stood tall in traditional dress, the setting sun turning his copper skin to bronze. Maria spoke words in Spanish and Apache while her husband added Christian blessing, creating something entirely new, a joining that honored all traditions while being enslaved to none. Do you take this man, knowing the path will be hard, that two worlds may always war within your home? Maria asked. I take him because of it, Clara answered. In the space between worlds, we make our own. When Taza slipped a ring of carved turquoise on her finger, his grandmother's, saved through all his wandering, Clara felt her eyes burn with tears, not of sorrow, but of overwhelming gratitude for this unlikely grace. As stars emerged overhead, the valley celebrated. Drums echoed off canyon walls while guitars added Spanish rhythm. Clara danced until her feet ached, laughed until her sides hurt, felt joy like a physical presence in her chest. Later, in their half-finished cabin, she and Taza lay entwined on their narrow bed, listening to distant music and coyote song. No regrets, he asked one final time. Clara thought of everything that had brought them here, the pain, the loss, the terrible choices and desperate chances. Then she looked at this man who had taught her that home wasn't a place, but a choice, that love could bloom in the most unlikely ground. Only one, she said. He tensed slightly. What? That it took so long to find you? His laughter rumbled through the darkness, rich and warm. Stubborn woman, had to wait for right moment. Spirits know best timing. Outside, an owl called, and somewhere in the distance, she could hear the stream singing its eternal song. The mountains stood guard, ancient and protective, holding their small valley like a cupped palm holding water. Clara closed her eyes, feeling Taza's heartbeat against her cheek, and knew herself finally, completely. Home. Not the home she'd planned or the life she'd expected, but something fiercer and truer, a life carved from courage and choice, where love grew wild and free as the desert roses that bloomed impossibly in stone. In the years to come, she would deliver babies and set bones, would learn to weave Apache baskets and make Mexican tortillas, would defend her home with gun and grit when needed. She would see the old world change and the new world struggle to be born. But tonight, in this moment between all worlds, she was simply Clara who had chosen Taza, who had chosen life, who had chosen to write her own story in the vast book of the West. The mountains remembered it all, as they remembered every tale of love and loss, hope and courage. And somewhere in their stone heart, they smiled. Thank you so much for listening to this Wild West love story. I'd love to know where in the world you're enjoying this tale. Please share in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the From Wild West channel for more stories of courage, love, and adventure from America's frontier. What did you think of Clara and Taza's journey? Share your thoughts below, and let's discuss this incredible story of love that crossed all boundaries.